Yeah, welcome to another episode of Launchpad TV. We did this last Thursday. We're going to continue to be doing this over the coming weeks and on a regular basis for Launchpad members. We also went ahead and tweeted this out, shared it out, so may have some people joining who are not Launchpad members, future Launchpad members. We should
right? Launchpad Nation members.
Right.
Yeah, something we've been thinking about is, especially since last week, every day, I don't know about you guys, but every day feels like an entire week. And it seems like we're in a constant state of flux. So one of the things we talked about was making sure that we're starting to get resources out there. I know a lot of people in my network have jobs, and Chris's network, all of our networks, right? And they have jobs and, oh, Maddie, we don't like hearing coughs. But, I think the reality is, I think I hear a lot of people frustrated with educating their kids at home and keeping them focused on whatever the learning practice that they've been sent home with their teacher. And all those kind of things. And my heart goes out to them in terms of some of those frustrations. I can tell you as a small business owner, and I think I speak for a lot of our small business owners, I'm looking forward to being bored and to being frustrated with being at home. I think we're realizing just, how crazy it is right now, and our priorities, our health, just like Aaron shared with us, where it's a really anxious time, and we're nervous about whether or not we're going to get sick, whether we're going to have an impact on our community. I know we're yelling at our parents to stay home and make sure that they don't put themselves in harm's way. And then, the second thing we're thinking about is, how do we survive this? And we're thinking about, how do we survive the next couple months? What does it look like after? What does coming back together look like? And I guess, the one bright spot is, I think what we're seeing is, we've been on the road for what feels like 10 years, 20 years. And we're looking at 4, 5, 6, who knows, however many months of staying at home and being connected and figuring out virtual ways to do that. And I think I'm not missing the road. So that's my one bright spot for the day. How about you?
Yeah, I guess not missing the road, and we have been able to get outside and take some hikes with our daughter and do a little bit of that. So
for the moment, I think that's one of the nice things of living in a rural community. You can still avoid some of the trappings of the city, but
yeah,
that's for sure. The other thing, I think, just one of the things we've been talking about, we'll get into the show, because today we've got some great things for you. So we're going to be talking to some fantastic Launchpad alumni, Dear World's very own Robert Fogarty and Ben Reese. And so Chris is going to lead an interview with them a little later and talk about kind of what they're facing as a business. We're going to give you a little bit of insight from the Launchpad world. And of course, stay tuned till the end of the show, when I'm going to talk to you about my best lunch that I made this weekend as we go into making lunch. And so I know that's the most important part, but we won't get there for a little while. The other thing, I think, just we're happy to take any sort of ideas or questions or things and topics throughout the calls and throughout the show. We're obviously developing it. We're going to plan to do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're working also with our whole team, who's thinking about what programming, what activities we can do, how we can think about supporting you in a virtual world. I think there's a move towards some virtual happy hours. I'm sure that seems to be the trend online. But we're focusing LPTV on thinking about, like, how do we support you? How do we bring resources to you? How do we answer some of the questions, or go and get the answers to some of the questions? I know in the Slack channel recently, some folks were asking about kind of the SBA loan process. So Chris is going to talk us through that. And why don't we start with that, Chris? So one of the things I think we've been hearing from folks in our cities is, first of all, how are we going to help other members? How are we going to coalesce and understand what the real impact looks like? We've heard some from folks who are actively lobbying the government around some of these bailouts. I'm sure you guys share the same frustrations we do with both the Democrat and the Republican. This is a bipartisan frustration for us, which is, I think there's a lot of lawmakers trying to get everything right. And there's a lot of us small businesses who are just trying to figure out how to make it through the next couple of weeks. And so I think we're pushing for fast and quick results, and we're also thinking about ways to do that. So Chris, do you want to walk through a little bit of some of the findings we've had in the last couple of days?
Yeah, and I won't go into depth because this is a living document that that Drew on our team has been preparing and keeping updated. We're also going to send out the link, publish this on our blog so that everybody has access to it. And it is public information, but we're trying to keep all of the resources available coming through in real time. One of the things I wanted to highlight here is what I'm seeing as the most likely swiftest area that of sort of relief for small businesses is this SBA loan process. I think there's a number of proposals, and it is now live in all 50 states. When we were on last week, it was not yet live in Louisiana and New Jersey. It was live in California, but it's now live in all 50 states. So the small business SBA disaster loan assistance. I went through the application process yesterday on behalf of Launchpad. The application process is not hard, but the website sucks. So, or it's getting hammered. I don't want to throw it on the bus. It's just getting hammered right now. So it was super slow and just probably under a lot of pressure. But there's a couple of things that we're hearing about the SBA loans that I wanted to highlight, and these are sort of pros and cons here. I think it's the quickest way to get dollars into the hands of small businesses like ours and like yours. Right now these loans are set at up to $2 million. Probably close, based on your own business's kind of qualification and ability to pay back. I'm hearing various things about whether these loans are going to be personally guaranteed or need to be collateralized. Those are trade-offs. Obviously, if you're a founder of a small business and you're collateralizing something with your home or otherwise, you want to take those considerations very seriously. Some of the proposals, and I think a good bit of the debate in the Senate right now is around if there's going to be stipulations for keeping employees on board or rehiring employees that have been laid off. So that's a consideration, and be watching what happens with that. The other big consideration is around forgiveness, and obviously forgiveness benefits anybody, any of us that are going through it. Some of the things that we're hearing around forgiveness would be that any losses that you're incurring during this time, either lost revenue or additional expenses you're bearing. Basically, they take a look at last year and this year, and kind of look at the differential there, and take a look to see if you're experiencing losses. But there is a possibility that losses would be covered for a period of time. And there would be some loan forgiveness. This did take place during Katrina and after Katrina, so some businesses were impacted or were helped by some of this loan forgiveness. But you're not going to get the loan forgiveness unless you apply for the loan. So I would encourage everybody, if you need cash right now, this is probably the best best source of cash available. So we'll keep everybody updated. The rest of this document, I'll run through quickly. We're gonna keep this available on our website. And thank you to Drew for compiling resources. Also, if you have resources to submit, please submit them at the bottom here, the bit.ly link at the bottom of the page.
Great, thanks, Chris. So one thing we wanted to talk a little bit about before we jump into our interview with Robert and Ben is we did some outreach to all of our current members this week. So Chris sent a note out to everyone letting them know that, you know, we wanted to understand kind of the impact that they were facing as a business. We've gotten a tremendous response from you, and we really appreciate that. And that's actually really critical to us. One of the things we want to achieve is we want to be first of all, we want to be able to coalesce and codify and understand exactly what the impact is to our members so that we can design the right solutions that we can deliver, and specifically the solutions that is going to make the most impact for them, help us understand what they need during this time and the resources there. But we also want to be able to use that to put a real face on things. And I think when people are trying to look at bailout packages and legislation, it's very easy to get caught up into sort of the world of policy. And one of the things that we realize when we're sort of the troops on the ground is we need to put a face on it. And we need to really be able to tell people what the impact of this is, what the impact is to our members, what the impact is to small business, and really showcase that. And so the work you guys are doing to provide us your initial views on what the impact looks like is tremendous. And the reality is that we are going to be taking that on to understand what we can do for you, but also to be able to champion what we can ask our cities and our ecosystems and the organizations that are serving entrepreneurs and how they can help us and how they can help you. Mm-hmm. We at Launchpad we always talk about our core value of our members are our magic. We all are here in service to you, our members. We don't have a reason to be if you're not around. And so we want you to be strong. We want you to survive, and we want you to be successful. So from that, we thought we would just share a couple of the quotes from the world and what we've heard. Some of them are not the best, but I think it's important, right? And so how long can your business survive is one of the questions that we ask. And we for sure are in the doomsday scenarios. Maybe another month, not sure. My consulting business is basically dead. And then there are also some bright spots where we've adapted well. We're working remotely. We're spending a lot of time writing and publishing and working on new project work. And we've also heard from some of you, I just need you to keep the power and the internet on. And we understand that some of you don't have the choice, as we encourage everyone to follow their local guidance and their government that says, please stay home and shelter in place, take care of your families, take care of your communities, take care of your employees. And we will, of course, do our best at the appropriate time. We are also starting to quantify some of those impacts and starting to do that across it. We're obviously keeping all of the responses confidential. We're not sharing any details about the businesses, the type of business, or any of that. We just really appreciate your candor and your support for that. So 64% of those respondents so far are already experiencing lost revenue. 18% are projecting more than 25% lost revenue. Luckily, we haven't heard of any of our members having to do any layoffs or projecting to do layoffs at this time. Although I think, as we look at, we've been talking to our team about what our scenario looks like. We're all trying to avoid doing that at all costs. And so I imagine every other small business owner and Launchpad member is thinking about how to be creative, what solutions are available so that they can maintain their staff and their operations, because we will come through this. And when we come through that, we're going to need our teams intact, and we're going to need to be strong, and we're going to need to have done a lot of the things like one of our Launchpad members said, which is actually thinking about, how do we change the work that we're doing now to prepare us for that future state. And we're also happy about 10% of our respondents have actually said that they're feeling okay, and I think they're going to be fine, and they think they're going to weather this storm. And we want to sort of think about how we help the rest of our members be able to get to that point and weather this crisis. So keep submitting your responses, because those numbers are helpful to us. It's really helpful for us to be able to articulate and quantify. And of course, we'll keep everything confidential. That's why Chris sent it to you personally. We're not sharing it with our broader team. But it really is important for us to be able to be in a position to get the resources that we need to support our members. And with that, let's pass the mic over to Chris and bring on Robert and Benjamin.
Okay. Robert, I'm having you join as a panelist. Let's see if we can get you.
There you are.
All right.
Looking good.
Yeah. Good. Well, Robert, how are you doing today?
Chris and Ann, great to see your faces. We're hanging in. Benjamin is building our digital product right now. He's knee deep in it, so he sends his regards and says hello, and but he thinks I can handle this alone, which may or may not be the case.
I was going to ask you to give us the the low point, the biggest fight you guys have had in the last week.
Well, hang on. Let's introduce Robert to everyone. I saw Adele is already shouting out in the chat room. Adele knows you. Many
Love Adele.
Launchpad members know you well. Robert is a OG part of the Launchpad Nation. Way back when in New Orleans. Robert, tell us a little bit about your journey since Launchpad with Dear World, and that's taking you from New Orleans to LA, and you're now in Salt Lake City. Just bring everybody up to date on where you are right now.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks, Hannon. Hey, Adele, and really everyone in Nashville, Memphis, New Orleans, Newark, and Stockton, I think, are the current locations, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, what a beautiful thing. Yeah, the last 10 years, it started in New Orleans. Chris was one of my first believers. And we're most known for these portraits where people write a message on their skin. In New Orleans after Katrina, we asked people to write why they love the city. Now for the last 10 years, it's kind of turned into a movement of sorts. 150,000 portraits have been taken just by our team, and from around the world with some of the best organizations, companies. We have a college tour, and we also have a charity that goes and does what I would say are the kind of the stories of our generation, from Syrian refugees to Pulse nightclub survivors. So our brains are moving really quickly on how to survive and also how to contribute to the conversation of what I think will be a multi-generational story of our time, is this moment for us now. Yeah.
And I'm interested, you obviously are sort of a subject matter expert here, because your business and your model, and maybe I should say your craft and your art, has highlighted and brought awareness to situations that are times of crisis. So I'm interested in, as you said, this is going to be something that is a crisis for our times. Many of us went through Katrina or other disasters. I think one of the interesting things here is the entire world is focused on a disaster, a single challenge, all at once. and it doesn't really have a face, right? It's not a person, it's not an enemy. It's a it's a virus, it's an illness. But talk to me through your lens, how you're, it's unfolding in real time. We're all processing this so fast. How are you viewing what's going on right now?
Great question. I mean, I think the first, it's the old metaphor of put your own oxygen mask on first in a plane that's going down, and I think it really rings true. I mean, the first things first for Benjamin and I, and to echo Ann and the results of the survey, we have a plan to remain solvent through 2020 without layoffs. We only have 2 full-time staff right now and another 9 or 10 contractors who do rely on us, but are more events-based folks. So the first thing has been really kind of like, how do we batten down the hatches and survive? Mm-hmm. Luckily, because of the business we're in the meetings and events business. One of our biggest global clients canceled about 2.5 months ago, back when they had Asia Pacific people coming to the United States for an event that I was going to be speaking at and photographing. So the writing on the wall came really early to us over here that this was going to be something significant to our business. And then week by week by week, and of course, I think last week, or I don't even know what it was, 2 weeks ago, when the bottom just kind of fell out on everybody, we had actually been able to prepare a bit more because of kind of seeing it kind of play out as long as, really about 2 months ago, when people started canceling they started canceling events that had Asia Pacific attendees coming. And a lot of our events are around leadership and development and team building. So this was global financial firm who were just like, we can't have this celebrated, this meeting for 200 of our top people and exclude 25% of the group. We're just going to postpone it. So I think we've done a good job of kind of battening down the hatches. And now, it's funny. I mean, and I think it's so appropriate to be on with you, Chris, and you, Ann, and to have Adele on the line, and so many of these other folks. We're all fighters. Benjamin and I have our fists up and are on our toes. And I haven't felt quite like this in about a decade. And in some way, that is keeping me motivated every day. Is how do you wake up every day and feel like you're on your toes and not your heels, which is kind of what I think many people experienced back in post-Katrina New Orleans. So that's what I'm trying to do every day. And we're continuing to make investments in the brand. We're continuing to make investments on the long-term game that we're gonna gather again. And there's going to be a bounce of this kind of insatiable, this kind of we're programmed to be social. Will it look different? Will the meetings and events business, will how we gather look different? Probably, but I think it's just it's so built into our genetic code to gather and to socialize and to be with each other that when this enemy, I think we are in kind of a wartime situation with the virus. We have, I think, however long that takes, whether it's a vaccine, whether it fades out, there's going to be a bump and a bounce back to being with each other in real life.
Yeah. Hey, Robert, I mean, just because, not to quote Sandra Bullock, but, I think your brand is crisis. But how are you thinking about, this is a really, really emotional time. How are you thinking about the manifestation of that emotion right now from sort of the collective world around?
Great question. Here's the thing that I think I would love that all of us, especially leaders on this call, is to have graciousness with ourselves and to have graciousness with others. I don't think at this point there are people who aren't taking this seriously. The thing that has bothered me a bit in this kind of a very emotional space is, and it's funny, some of my first responder friends and my medical staff friends are like, you have to have a dark sense of humor to work in this business regardless. And, you know, there has been kind of some righteousness around first responders or people making jokes around this. And I use that as an example of like people cope in crisis differently. And I really have this sense of, you know, that people are taking this seriously. And the thing that I abhor in my own self is to sit back from my own armchair and make judgments out of a righteousness of like I'm somehow smarter or more positioned than folks. So that's just the one right now of like in high emotion to take a step back and be gracious with ourselves and be gracious with others.
Maybe save the Monday morning quarterback for the Saints.
What's that?
Save the quarterbacking for the Saints.
Save the quarterbacking for the Saints. Yeah.
That's good feedback. And that's good advice. I know we try to think about that too, right? Which is, especially when we're sheltering in place, we got to be kind to each other.
There's a place for anger too. I think what's fascinating after 10 years of doing this work that are more acute crises, right? Like interviewing a Boston Marathon bombing survivor who had her legs blown up there's a big difference between sitting next to her in her hospital bed in immediate and acute recovery than kind of, you know, after 6 months where we started our process with her. This idea, we are intra trauma, we are intra chaos right now, which is where you need to kind of expand forgiveness, reconciliation, redemption, these things that some of our, I think, faculties, our emotional faculties, we want to solve, we want to make decisions, we want to protect, we want to survive, which are sometimes, I think, harmful intra-chaos. When you should actually be doing the opposite, which is giving grace, giving the benefit of the doubt. These kind of things. I hope that makes sense. You know, I got burned really bad. We went up to Breezy Point, New York, right after Hurricane Sandy. If you remember, Breezy Point had a fire that pretty much the entire town in Breezy Point burned down in Hurricane Sandy. And this was very early in Dear World, and you know, I thought that we were better at this work than we were. And it was my first experience kind of going into a disaster zone and playing wartime journalist or whatever you want to do. And I will never forget the not having an understanding of like the anger in which even the asking the question of how do you feel would provoke some of the people I asked, because they were digging out their burned down houses, and they're like, basically like, how the F do you think I feel? and I have learned from this work, journalists make, you know, and I love journalists. I have a lot of journalist friends. I have a lot of people in the media, but now knowing, you know, when you sit and ask a survivor, like, you know, when I sat next to a Pulse nightclub survivor, who was shot 16 times, and basically I started the interview with this kind of treaty with him that was like, here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to ask you how you feel on the anniversary. I'm not going to, and he was just so dumbfounded after like many, many interviews with journalists of like, journalists, that's all they want. They only want these kind of like hyper emotional responses to these questions. So what is hard right now is I think we're all going through this at the same time in the same boat. And, you know, we all react to like survival differently. So I don't know if that helps at all, but I've been on the other side of kind of getting my tail handed to me, you know, outside of a guy's burned down house. And so I've learned to be intra chaos, intra survival be very careful with what you're trying to ask, and set expectations of what you're trying to discover.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. I feel like we're all that whole sort of fog of war thing, and things are coming at us so fast, right? One of the things we're talking about with our team is we're making decisions for today, and we're making the best decisions we can for the weeks ahead. But these are not long-term thinking times. These are sort of day-to-day, day-to-day times here. So. I want to encourage anybody who is in the watching and wants to post any questions in the chat. If you have a question for Robert, or I don't know how exactly the Zoom functionality works, but if you want to raise your hand and you want to, I'll promote you to a panelist and you can join in here.
Or just write your questions in chat and we can ask them ourselves.
Or write your questions in chat and we'll ask. But I'm curious, Robert, about anything you're doing now that maybe, with part of your business being shut down. I'm trying to be sensitive in my language.
Oh, yeah.
Like live event gathering is off the table for the time being, which is a big part of what you do. Can you share anything that sort of has encouraged? I think one of the things that I'll use myself and Anne and Launchpad, our team, as an example, is we're not necessarily pivoting, but we're activating areas of our business that we're sort of things that are okay. We'll get there someday. We know we should be building community online. We know we should do Launchpad TV or do more virtually or do more community building in ways that we haven't, but we hadn't prioritized it. So are there things that you are working on that all of a sudden have become extremely relevant, either in a hunker down and we got to do something, or in a lofty, ambitious, hey, this is something that might be really helpful during this time for people?
Yeah, so we're doing two things. One, out of the for-profit event side, the thing I think I discovered more than anything with this is we were not diversified at all in our revenue. I mean, we went to zero over a series of 2 months, and then the bottom fell out, right? So that was a big kind of wake-up call to me of like we have a glaring hole in diversifying our revenue stream. Benjamin and I have always thought that Dear World is bigger than just this kind of like hyper luxury keynote speech and like, really well lit, beautiful photographs, which has been our model, right? That's really how we've built the last 10 years. So what we're doing right now, like everyone, I mean, it's kind of cliche, is moving to virtual. We've launched digital.dearworld.com. It's live right now. We're testing on Friday with some of our friends and family. Would love Chris or Ann or Adele or anyone on this. We'll follow up. Friday is going to be rough. It's a test. Our differentiator, and if you remember, Chris, Benjamin's, of course, his experience at Live Set back in the LP days. We think our differentiator in the digital space is I don't know if you can see this. We have a really beautiful loft in Salt Lake City where we're going to put the pinstripes on the facilitator side, the Dear World experience. We're going to be running 2 cameras set up, live streaming through Zoom with full frame cameras. A beautiful set. Because I think right now everyone is moving to digital experiences. I think the people who are going to win, at least in being able to capture some revenue in our market, at least in meetings and events, is to be able to demonstrate the pinstripes on this side. Yeah. I think it's a fool's errand, at least for us, to just think we can port webcam to webcam and ask for money for that. I do think perception is reality. If we can build a tight brand in a pinstripe set and take people through this experience, we might be able to get corporate leaders. Our demographic is a person who leads a team that is now remote. She doesn't know how to keep them engaged or keep them motivated or even be able to give them space to tell their stories. That Dear World can be an intervention for that. We think it's worthy of doing, just on this idea that Dear World needs to become more democratic anyway. So that's what we're doing on the for-profit side of the business. Over the last 10 years, we've been profitable every year since our inception, which is really cool. We have a plan to break even this year, maybe. But because of that, we have dearworld.org, which is our charity. After every fiscal year, I meet with my accountant and we look at our bottom line, and I make a donation into our charity based on our 4 fee events. So we've stockpiled some cash into that .org, and that's where that's how we pay for the Syrian refugee projects, or we were just in Varanasi, India, the Boston Marathon work. That's all where that money, or where that work is produced out of dearworld.org. So we have some, I think, exciting things right now that I can't really talk about because of board approval, but it's going to be coming out in the next week or so, that is essentially how can photographers who are out of work begin to document the stories of our time in the Dear World way. And we will also invest in them to be able to do that. So part art competition, part documentarians. What I hope stokes the fire, though, of creativity out of the charitable side of the organization.
I love it. And I also know that in a conversation we had when we saw each other, a week and a half or whenever it was, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
On the eve of COVID-19.
Yeah. We had talked about it, and I think we had talked about, hey, this is a time to make art or create or do something, inspiring, right? And it sounds like that's one of the directions you're headed here.
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is the health and safety of society. I love some of these entrepreneurs, and I saw this in New Orleans and others who are now making hand sanitizer instead of distilling vodka. They're making masks instead of making furniture. I think that there is a place for creators in art in these times as well that can be deferential to the crisis at hand, but also know our lane and how we contribute. And so the design thinking for me right now, Chris and Ann, is truly on this wartime, Rosie the Riveter. How do we all play our part in a way that contributes to the common good? And I do think that artists are not throwaway people in times of crisis. I think that we will look back on this time generationally, and the way we talk about this time will often be because of the musicians, the poets, the photographers, and the filmmakers, and how they express this time through their lenses. So what I think is hard right now is, for me, is the positioning of being deferential to healthcare in crisis and the immediate needs of preserving human life, and documenting the times in a way that we can look back on and discover or remember.
Yeah. I think, Robert, we all would agree, the documenting of the times and art as an art form in its very many phases and forms is so critical to being able to conjure sentiment that many of us in society have a real hard time communicating and articulating, right? And what it does is it puts a face and a voice and an image on how society is feeling, but it also gives us an outlet. And so I agree with you that it is absolutely critical to figure out how to galvanize those troops of artists, filmmakers, photographers, musicians, etc. Because we as society, we can't just be sitting at home only focusing on the hard parts. We actually we need that visualization to come to life. And certainly, well, I think one of the highlights of our weekend were some of the musicians who were just getting out there and playing like 8-hour sets, right? And that's therapy, right? In fact, you said it yourself, which is in times of crisis, there's a level of energy around the work sometimes, and your work, and a lot of artists' work is art. And for us, we feel sort of that same level of energy of like, this is it. Like, we're here, we're fighters. We know how to actually go to war. We're going to go to war together. And we need everybody playing their part in that. And that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
As I said to somebody on our team, I said, look, you're about to leapfrog your career age by about 5 to 10 years in the next 3 months. And so, Robert, thank you, and Ben, for what you're doing. Thank you for thinking about not just how to survive, but also how to document this time for us. And we, of course, remember Ben from his live set days. Ben at live set, I eviscerated his pitch, and that is how I met Chris. We would not be here.
I'm gonna give him a little nudge about the. So you were he pitched a panel that you were the judge on
at South by.
No, it was just we were having.
Or he pitched
different people at the Bristol Hotel. And Ben was sitting beside me, and I was meeting with somebody he was meeting with, and then Chris said, "Oh, you're whatever. What, Ben? Why don't you pitch her? We're investing in this company." And I was like, "Great!" And I just like ripped it to shreds, because that's what I did then, because I wasn't gracious and I wasn't very nice. And Chris was like, "Ooh, she's sort of smart."
I love that. What a great
story.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate y'all. I would love to leave you with this. The binge movie of the week for me will be The Dead Poet Society. And remember, Robin Williams was played by a character. He played a character named John Keating. And he quotes Whitman in this. If you remember, he says, "Oh me, oh life, of the questions of these recurring, of endless trains of faithless, of cities filled with the foolish. What good amid these, oh me, oh my, what is life? The answer that you are here, that life exists, and identity, that the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. That the powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse." So what will your verse be? I think that is really our part now, y'all, is we need to contribute our verses.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Robert, and I think that's a wonderful way to close it here. Thank you for being with us today, and best of luck as you bear down, hunker down, weather the storm. We're all trying to be cockroaches here and stay alive, and may we all contribute a verse to society and to each other. And get through this together. So thanks for being here with us today, Robert.
Love y'all. Appreciate you for giving me the time.
All right.
So that's we're coming to a wrap on the show. Anything else you want to add before we talk about upcoming shows and my lunch from the weekend?
No, go ahead.
All right. So look forward to. We'll be back with you on Thursday. Look forward to even more programs coming out of Launchpad from our fantastic community managers and our entire team who are hard at work thinking of creative ways to connect with you in this now virtual world. Chris and I will be back here on Thursday. If you are interested in being part of our interview, if you are interested in being a panelist or topics that you would like us to cover on the show, please reach out to us. Best way to do that is Ariel, our fantastic showrunner and producer, Ariel Behringer, ARIEL at LP.co. It's in the chat window, so you can find it out. Of course, you can reach out to us, Chris and Ann, at launchpad.com. LP.co. I'll get it right next time. And that's Chris at LP.co or Ann, ANNE@lp.co. And I look forward to next time, and I'm looking forward to hearing about your health and wellness regime, Chris, next time. But I was really happy. What I did this weekend was I took French tarts. This was inspired by my friend Corinne, who I visited in France, and when she was a newlywed, she started like making these little French tarts. And I took tart shells, and we made leek and mushroom and some cream. We reduced that, put that in, added some ricotta cheese, because that's all the cheese that I have, because Chris won't let me go to the store anymore, and laid out some asparagus, because I had some asparagus. Popped that in the oven, according to the instructions on the box. And then it was a great lunch. It went picnicked well. It held up well. It was delicious. It was satisfying. It was naughty, but not too naughty, which is really all you can get from a lunch.
It was delicious.
You have anything else you'd like to say to sign us off?
Well, we got to eat. So you have any interactive elements you want to hear from the audience on what they had for lunch?
Yeah, anyone want to share their lunch item of choice? We all need inspiration in this time.
All right. Well, with that, we're gonna wrap up this week. One thing that's going to pop up, maybe if it's configured well as we end this, is a survey that'll let you give us feedback on this session, and also suggest things, suggest guests, suggest topics. So if there is something you'd like to have us cover, or somebody that you'd like us to have on as an interviewee, and that can include yourself, please fill out that survey or send it to Ariel, whose name is in the chat. And
please be gentle.
Yeah, be gentle, be kind, maybe stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Please stay healthy. Your business, your relationships, and most of all, yourself. Keep yourself healthy. All right, thanks for joining us today, and we'll sign off now.
And to you, Aaron, go hug that baby of yours.
Bye, guys.